"Trudy, be a dear and read these stories for me," said Jo Montfort, laying out articles for her school's newspaper on a tea table. "I can't abide errors." Gertrude Van Eyck, all blonde curls and dimples, stopped dead in the middle of the common room. "How did you know it was me? You didn't even look up." "Duke told me," Jo replied. Duke's cameos were Trudy's favorite brand of cigarette. Trudy sniffed her sleeve. "Do I smell? You positively reek. What does Gilbert Grosvenor think of you smoking cigarettes?" "Gilbert Grosvenor doesn't know. Not about the ciggies or the bottle of gin under my bed, or that utterly swell boy who delivers apples," Trudy said, winking. "Slang does not become a Farmington girl, Gertrude," sniffed Libba Newland, seated nearby with her friend May Delano. "Neither does that fringe, Lib," said Trudy, eyeing Libba's badly curled bangs. "Well, I never!" Libba huffed. "And I'm sure you never will," Trudy said archly. "Stop being awful and read these, True," Jo scolded. "My deadline's tomorrow." Trudy sat down at the table and helped herself to a jam tart from Jo's plate. It was 3:00, tea time at Miss Sparkwell's, and the common room was crowded with students on break. Everyone was chatting and eating except Jo, who was busy finalizing the layout for the second edition of the Jonquil. "What do we have this week?" Trudy asked. "The usual tripe?" Jo sighed. "I'm afraid so," she said. "There's a piece on the proper way to brew tea, a poem about kittens, Miss Sparkwell's impressions of the Louvre, and advice on how to fade freckles." "Ye gads! Anything else?" Jo hesitated, working up her nerve. "As a matter of fact, yes. A story on the abuse of girl laborers at Fenton's textile mill," she said, handing one of the articles to her friend. "That's so funny, my darling," Trudy said, smiling. Her smile faded as she read the first lines. "Oh, dear God, you're serious." Trudy kept reading, riveted, and Jo watched her, thrilled. Jo was a senior at Miss Sparkwell's and had written for the Jonquil during her 3 previous years at the school. But this was the first important story she'd written. She'd worked hard to get it. She'd taken risks, just like a real reporter. "What do you think?" she asked eagerly when Trudy finished reading. "I think you've lost your mind," Trudy replied. "But do you think it's good?" Jo pressed. "Very." Jo, who'd been perched on the edge of her seat, shot forward and hugged Trudy, a huge grin on her face. "But that's entirely beside the point," Trudy said sternly as Jo sat down again. "If you hand in the layout to Sparky with that story in it, you're done for. Detention for a week and a letter home." "It's not that bad. Nellie Bly's pieces are far more provocative," said Jo. "You're comparing yourself to Nellie Bly?" Trudy asked, incredulous. "Need I remind you that she's a scandalous lady reporter who meddles in other people's business and has no hope of marrying a decent man? You, in contrast, are a Montfort, and Montforts marry, early and well, and that is all." "Well, this Montfort's going to do a bit more," Jo declared, "like write stories for newspapers." Trudy raised a perfectly arched eyebrow. "Is that so? Have you informed your mother?" "Actually, no. Not yet," Jo admitted. Trudy laughed. "Not ever, you mean? Unless you want to find yourself locked away in a convent until you're 50. "True, this is a story that must be told," Jo said, her passion clear in her voice. "Those poor girls are being mistreated. They're worked hard and paid little. They're practically slaves." "Jo, how on earth do you know this?" "I spoke with some of them." "You didn't," Trudy said. "I did, on Sunday, after services." "But you went straight to your room after services. You said you had a headache." "And then I climbed out of my window and went down to the river, to one of the boarding houses there," Jo said, lowering her voice. She didn't want anyone to overhear her. "A farmer gave me a ride in his wagon. I spoke with 3 girls. One was 17, our age, True. The others were younger. They work 10-hour days standing at these hellish looms. Injuries are common, so is exposure to coarse language and situations. I was told that some of the girls fall in with bad sorts and become wayward." Trudy's eyes widened. Josephine Montfort.